Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome again to Business English course revision series that started with lecture 30th, and now we are halfway the revision series, and these three lectures are providing you a kind of view of the entire course that what we have covered so far. So in lecture 31 we are going to start with lecture 12 and we'll cover till lecture 18, and we will see what we have covered during all these lectures. So let us quickly revise what we have covered in these lectures based on lectures of business communication. Well, in lecture 12 and 13 we learned about how to write an effective resume. Well, resume writing is one important thing that we all need to know. We all do, sooner or later. We have to create our resume, design it. We have to, send it to different organizations because we have to move into the practical life by making ourselves good to something. So how can we write an effective resume to get a good job? That is what we discussed in lecture 12, and we discussed the objectives, organization and presentation aspects. What a resume earns you, it earns you an interview. If a resume, by reading a resume, by analyzing a resume, an employer gives you a call for an interview, that means you have a good resume. And if after an interview you receive a call for a job, that means you have been a wonderful interviewee. So it should stand out. It needs to have organization, and it needs to have clear sections in a logical flow, and each section should be a complete section. We talked about different types of resumes, and we talked about the characteristics of these types to know what differentiate them from the other types. Well, we also talked about the aspects of cover letter, because this document goes with resume as a wrapper, so we need to know what it wraps up. Alright, what a resume gets you? It gets you an interview. This is a very interesting image that I could find for it. Look at this image, how somebody's picked out of so many just because of his resume. Alright, find out which applications are suitable. Choose a small number of candidates to interview. Same issue for proposals and grant applications are there, so you have to be careful. Your resume should stand out from the crowd. Include interesting and unique information. Attempt best effort to make a first impression. No chance to explain if you do not get an interview. You don't get a second chance. It's always either you get it or you don't. Now, what is this anatomy about a resume? How do we make a resume? How many sections a resume has? So this is a summary of the section that you can on the screen. A resume precisely talks about your personal information, that includes your name, address, telephone number, email, any type of contact address that you would like to provide. It talks about the objectives that you have, your career objectives. It explains your academic proficiency, your professional skills, your experience, your achievements and awards, your skills, and this skill, professional affiliations and publications or projects is an optional section. However, it is always utilized if you want to make your resume a persuasive document to impress your employer to give you a call at least for an interview. Alright, now how do we start with the contact information? Well, you start with your name. It should be bold, however not underlined. You give your address. You can either provide your permanent address, or you can write both of them, your current and permanent together. You can talk about, you can provide your telephone number. It's always better to provide your telephone number with the country and area code. Give your email address and make sure that the email address you provide is accurate, and you provide right spellings and right information, because maybe this remains to be the only source that the employer or the team uses to contact you. So if you provide the wrong email address, the email will never reach you. The objective section basically talks about, it usually has one or two sentences, or it may have a, a section of phrases, 4 to 5 phrases. It talks about the type of position you are interested in, whether it's a full-time job that you want to do, or a part-time, or an internship, or a career development job, whatever you are interested in and applying for. Then what position would you like to find out, and emphasize how you will use your skills, not what you want to gain, because I have read many objective sections they state that I want to gain more, I want to learn more, and I want to gain this and this and this to improve my abilities. Well, if you want to improve your abilities, what benefit do I have? So when you are addressing your audience is your employer. Find out what he or she wants, what the company wants. How can you benefit them? What is there to offer them? Do not talk about this. May be your agenda. Let it be a hidden agenda, that what you are going to get out of this deal. Definitely you will not make a deal of loss. You're going to get something, but you don't need to mention that. You need to emphasize what you are going to offer the company. Why should they hire you? Well, before that you start writing your resume, you need to ask these questions from yourself. What jobs are you applying for, and what skills, what knowledge, what qualifications, what experience and tasks are required to convince your employer or the reviewer of the resume to call you for an interview. And of course, for this type of task, you need to have audience information. And here your audience is either the individual you're applying to, or the group of people, or the company, or the institute. So they become your audience. The component of cover letter and resume are, they have to correspond to each other. So you need to really think about whatever you are going to give into the resume, whether it corresponds with the advertisement of the job, and then what are those things that are given specifically, or that are specific requirements, and then these are the things you are going to emphasize on specifically in your cover letter. And then which type of resume you are going to use in order to frame yours. The language style of cover letter as well as business letter in general, you have to decide right in the beginning before you get into it. Then go through the resume components and see what components you want to add, and what information do you have with you in order to make this section. You need to have a heading, your objective, your qualification summary, that is education, and how do you mention your education? You write your degree, school, date graduated, and your major, or whatever sequence of information that you are using. Like, I did my master's from this university in 2010, and my major was English literature, or English with major English literature as major. Whatever sequence of information you are using, try to use that for all of the degrees that you are going to talk about, you are going to mention. Do not bring variety in each degree in the sequence of information. If you want to talk about the GPA, do talk about it, but if you can include GPA for all the degrees, only then write it. Honoraries, scholarships, offices held, any information that you want to write in the education section, but make sure that there is enough space and enough demand of it, that what you are providing. Then it comes experience section, another very important section if you are an experienced employee. Dates of employment from and to, who was your employer, what division, what position did you hold, and what was the title, what was the key responsibilities and achievements. You can provide the examples if you want. By stating that this and this responsibility, you took this responsibility and they helped you achieve this. And if you had any extracurricular activities or activities and honors during your job, you can mention it, and then you give your personal data and reference. Now, we talked about different types of resume, but I would like to refresh your understanding of two types right now. One is chronological and other is functional or skill-based resume. When chronological is the resume that is usually used by people who have some information about their past experience, that they have experience of job and they would like to mention their experience. However, the functional and skill-based resume is more used by the people who are freshmen and who are fresh graduates and going to job for the first time. So, considering that you are students, probably the second type is going to be of your use. Then after designing your resume, you pay particular attention to designing your cover letter, because this is the cover like a toffee or a chocolate. It has to be attractive. It has to be full with the information that can impress your reader. Plus, it has to be true too, because you can be asked to provide evidence for what you have written. So, the format that it flows with, it has an opening part, it has some highlights, it has a closing, and it has you need to take care of format for a cover letter. So, your opening will usually involve your reason for writing. You make a point that you will think will be interesting to the addressee, and you highlight and give examples of the qualifications that are specifically asked for or you think are important for your employer to know about you, and provide evidences. Well, we had our detailed almost 3 lectures regarding job interviews, and we talked about all these things in detail. And closing, ask for an interview, and use block format if you want to, or a justified left, or a single space, double space between paragraphs. So all the format conventions now, you can use any one of them, but make sure whatever you use, stay consistent with that. Do not make your letter a hodgepodge of 2 or 3 formats. It's always good to research the companies before you apply for a job and send in your resume. And it's always good that be self-assertive and matter of fact. Do not exaggerate or provide false information. Otherwise, you will lose your trust. It's good to be concrete. Use verbs more than adjectives, and appearance matters. So, what is the appearance of your resume? Make sure that it has to be elegant. It has to be very decent. Don't decorate or don't over-decorate it. The appearance of your resume also involves concern regarding language proficiency, the use of grammar and spelling, spatial arrangement of resume and the data, the font size you use, the spacing you use, printing and paper quality, and what else? A bit of creative and elegance decoration if possible. But please focus on a bit of and creative and elegant. Do not focus on decoration, because then you will go into unnecessary details. Well, lecture 14 talked more about resume, and we learned how we can write a good resume, an effective resume. So in this strategies we went through were to do prior to deciding on the format. How can we decide the format? So again, I'll take you back to your audience information. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What is my brand? And who am I writing it to? And keys to getting it right are: think ahead, write to the future. Emphasize specific skills to match the career you're asking for or seeking in, and write to your reader the target industry or the function, and market yourself by only including what's important to your reader, not what is all inside you. A good resume formatting, it's always good to use one-page resume unless you have 10 years of experience to project. And always mix sections in the order where you have name, education, experience, and activities, and all the additional information then comes afterwards. Now, current and previous job responsibilities present your skill and results. So, in addition to general duties and responsibilities, you can talk about the current job responsibilities. Good resume content shows the impact your performance has or had on the department, project, organization, or the company. Quantify information, show the results, so your reader is able to understand what you want to convey. Prioritize bullet points beginning with the most relevant or most impactful first. Use action verbs descriptive of your skill to start each bullet point, and show promotion or advancement by titles and dates. No outdated or irrelevant activities should be added, because then they distract the reader and the reader may stop reading ahead. So this was all about lecture 14. Now we are going to talk about lecture 15. Lecture 15 was basically about technical documentation, and it involved writing reports. So what are these reports? How do we use computer to compose our reports? Anatomy of a report. What are these sales report or feature of reports? And how do we communicate when we are composing these documents? And what are different types of reports that we need to write when we are in business? So before that we start talking about reports, we need to refresh our understanding regarding how we communicate in business, specifically when we are documenting. So business documents include like CV, resumes, email, websites, frequently asked questions, blogs, and letters, newsletters, brochures, articles, catalogs, advertisements, notice boards, pamphlets, signs, press release, presentations, multimedia activities, and talks and writing, reports, manuals, proposals, books, and so on and so forth. Never forget that whatever documentation you are doing for a business purpose, it involves a purpose, it involves some audience, it needs to have organization, and it should attend the specification of medium and the channel it is using to communicate the message. When we are writing report, we need to make sure which report are we writing, whether it's a sales report, inspection report, annual report, audit report, feasibility report, progress report, or white paper report. Our aim or our objective will enable us to know that what type of report we are going to write. Once we are done with our decision, we need to know that whether we need to write a formal report or an informal report. Whether we are writing an information report or analytical report, or whether this is a recommendation report, or we need to understand the objectives of our writing. These are writing objectives. And then we have three different you can say that formats of these report. One is a memo report, other is letter report, and the third one is long length report. However, whatsoever you're writing, you are following a few steps. And these are 5 basic steps of report writing. You define the problem, you gather the necessary information, you analyze the information, you organize the data, you write the report, and then you provide all the results and findings in the light of your findings. Organization of a report includes comparison and contrast, problem solution, elimination of alternatives, general to particular. It moves from general to particular, geographic to spatial, and functional and chronological. So these are different ways to organize your reports, and you can choose any one of them, or you can make a combination of one or two. It depends on the demand of your report. Anatomy of a report covers, like I said, it has a cover page, it has a title page, letter of transmittal, table of contents, list of illustrations, executive summary, and report body. However, it depends what type of report you are going to write. I'm going to give you a graphical example of different types of report that you need based on the situation you are in and the type of report you're writing, whether it's formal or informal. However, a report body includes introduction, and it has a body, and it has conclusion and appendixes. And we discussed all these items in detail. However, to touch upon them once again, introduction involves information of purpose and scope, and what limitations it deals with, and assumptions and methods we are going to bring into play when we are writing these reports. Then background involves history of the problem, and tells us what this problem is all about, or how does it start, or what are the items that we need to take care of when we are dealing with this problem. Body of the report includes and presents data, and interpret data as well. So body will basically be the meat of the document, the real thing of the document, where you bring in everything in play and let it play and let it come with some kind of result. And you conclude your report with some findings that you infer and draw from your conclusions. You draw from the findings and results, and you provide your recommendations and suggestions. Then in the end, you have references or works cited and appendixes, of course, like interview transcripts, questionnaires, questions, tallies, printouts, and previous reports. Whatsoever you have referred to or you have used inside your project, or you have used any to create some backup information, you give reference of all this material. Letter of transmittal is another type of letter that primarily goes with a report. It covers the background of the problem that you either intend to solve or you are moving to solve, and it summarizes the conclusion and provide recommendations or suggestions if there are any. It talks about the minor problems you have gone through, or if you faced any challenges. It thanks the reader and acknowledge all the people who have helped you compose this report and go through this research process. It talks about if there's any additional research necessary to go more and to go ahead in this area, and it thanks the reader for the time and the effort they have taken to go through this research and read it in detail. This was all about our introductory lecture on report writing, which was lecture 15, and now we are moving towards lecture 16. This lecture is about report writing, and this was a detailed talk that we had on the topic. In this we covered basically what are business reports, and we got to know that there are systematic attempts to answer questions and solve problems. So the systematic attempts is basically the focus of attention, and they include the activities such as planning, research, organization, and presentation. So the format of the report will include, as I mentioned, it has letter format, it has memo format, as well as manuscript format. These can be printed, and there can be a soft copy of a report. It depends how your reader would want to access your information. Now, if you look at the pattern of a report, it has two patterns. Like all other documents, business-related documents, it has a direct pattern as well as indirect pattern. However, there are situations which can help us understand and decide which pattern we need to take up for our writing activity. If your readers are informed, if they are supportive, and if they are eager to have results first, you need a direct pattern of report writing. However, the second pattern of report writing is indirect in nature. That is for the situations where your reader need to be educated first. They need to be persuaded, and then they may be hostile or disappointed. So you try to use an indirect pattern of report writing. Again, depends on the kind of message you are conveying. What is the nature of message? So these are some facts of universal truths about business English and business writing that we are learning, and they are equally applicable to all formats, all documents, and all types of business activity that we do inside business community or in business scenario. Applying the writing process to report. Again, the writing process, it has its scope in all types of documents and in all types of business activities. It has 7 steps to follow. The step 1 is to analyze the problem and purpose. And now once you are done with that, you anticipate the audience, their needs, and the issues they are dealing with. You prepare a work plan. You implement your research methodology and strategy, which you have already planned in your planning section. You organize, analyze, interpret, illustrate the data. You compose the first draft, and you revise, proofread, and evaluate it for its final shape. However, the work plan for a formal report includes Statement of a purpose, you need to know what is the statement of your purpose. Statement of the problem, source and methods of data collection, what sources are you going to use, what methods are you going to use, a tentative outline, work schedule. Now, how do we research report data? There are different ways of doing that. We locate secondary electronic data, and we explore into electronic database. This includes internet, World Wide Web search tools. There are different search engines. We go to these search engines, and some common search engines are Google, Amazon Search, Ask Jeeves, Yahoo. However, before we go to any search engine, we need to evaluate web sources. How current is the information? How credible is the author or source? What is the purpose of the site? So, once we are sure about these things, we need to understand, do the facts seem reliable? Unless it is reliable and trustworthy, we cannot make it a support of our argument. And tips for searching the web will include that use 2 or 3 search tools. Do not rely on a single tool. Unless you have the same information from all the tools, you cannot call it authentic and reliable. And understand the case sensitivity. The case can be very sensitive, and once you are providing some information and calling it researched information, then people tend to rely on it and can make it a reason of their decision. If you are misguiding them, you're not. This is a professional crime that you are committing. It's preferred to use uncommon words when you are searching for this information on the internet, and try to avoid all the articles and prepositions before when you put these words on any search engine. Only write the main words, the active words or the action words or the important words that you have in your title. Use wildcards. Know your search tools very well before using them, and learn basic Boolean search strategies. Bookmark the best pages so you are able to then again read them, shortlist them, and save them. Do not keep saving everything, because then it becomes a bulk of information that usually you do not go through. Be persistent. Do not stop your search. Repeat your search a week later if you are looking for some current information, because it keeps on changing. We talked about 2 types of data, the primary data and the secondary data. Well, we talked about secondary data. This can be achieved in different ways, and internet is one way of achieving secondary data. However, primary data can best be achieved by getting into the field yourself. Survey methods, survey interviews, observations, and experiments are different methods that can help us have our primary or empirical data. Now, once we are done with information, we collected data, we analyzed it, we got our findings, how to illustrate our report data, and what is the function of graphics here. Let's quickly talk about a few graphics and the functions they perform. Basically, like visual aids, as visual aids is one of the characteristics of business technical writing. You remember I talked about 4 things. I have been talking about them all the while. Business writing, business technical writing is purpose-oriented, audience-oriented, it has organization, it has some visual aid, or it takes care of the mediums it can involve to cater to different types of learners or audiences. So, the use of graphics, like in all other different types of business documents, report will involve some visual information too. However, it is to clarify data, to condense and simplify data at times, like if there is a lot of information and you write and there are so many facts, and if you write them in a paragraph, it is going to be a long paragraph, and then still reader will need to read it for a couple of times before they really understand it. So if you provide a table, or if you provide a graph, or if you provide a pie chart, it will be easy for them to quickly understand what is the message. So to emphasize some data, you use graphics. Now, what are these forms of graphics and what are their objectives? Tables, they have one objective behind, and that is to show exact figures and values. Look at this table. Now with the help of technology, this aspect has been made very interesting and easy to access. MS Office provides you excellent functions and features to be used for your graphics, whether you are dealing with MS Word or Excel or PowerPoint. You can have these tables, these charts, these graphs everywhere you want. What you need to do is you need to be clear about what data do you want to project, what are your categories, how do you form your rows, how do you form your columns, and you need to have color sense. Like if you are going to project your table on white screen, you look at the color scheme that is being used for the table, or the bright dark colors. Especially look at the headings. They are given in black, bold black, so they are, we can look at them. It's about what is the class level. Is it about agreement, disagreement, and undecisive opinions? Look at the figures. They have one color, and look at the column categories. They have another color. So this wise use of graphics and a creative use of colors, images, and shapes always help you identify data quickly and understand it better. Now look at this type of graphic. It's a bar chart. Bar charts are used to compare one item with other. How do we do that? Look at the bar chart. Look at the graph. Look at the bars. Look at the axis, x-axis and y-axis. They both have their variables. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. And then there is this measurement given on the other end. Your key is there to let you know that the red color, the red bar, stands for enrollees. How many enrollments you had? Look at the bright contrast between the background color and the bar color. So to make it even clearer. So the next form that we are going to look at is line chart. Line chart is to demonstrate changes in quantitative data over time. Look at this. First of all, look at the axis, years, and measuring scale. Look at the key. Key shows that there are two components being shown, and there's some kind of comparison going on. Comparison of change. The blue color shows the net amount, and the red color shows the gross amount. Look at the word net and gross in capital in sentence case, and this symbol of dollar shows that we are talking about money. Okay, now look at these curves. That is showing a kind of change of pattern. So when you intend to show some change of pattern, whether it is about money, or it is about moods, or it is about attitudes, line chart is a good option to show that. Look at this pie graph. Pie graph is basically to visualize a whole unit and the proportion of its component that you want to emphasize. It's looking at something from outside and looking at the bigger picture, entire image in a go. Look at the colors being used in contrast, divisions, the broader categories. Quickly looking at this, I can see that the red color is used in maximum. So whatsoever is red is bigger than all. That is strongly disagree. So 38% whatsoever is this mirror. 38% the disagreement is in majority. And if I want to see what is this brown stands for, that is the minimum. It is no opinion. That means most of the people talked about this thing. Okay, now look at this blue thing. It's again disagreement, but 28%. Now, if you look at the disagreement category, and if we combine 28 and 38%, so this is the total disagreement they had. Like half of it is disagreement and half of it is, most of it is strongly disagreement. So whatever is being discussed, people disagree with that. So this quickly shows us a trend taking place. All right. Now flowchart. What is a flowchart and what is it for? Flowchart is to display a process or procedure. Look at this flowchart. Well, there are 4 things to take care of. Look at the overall flowchart, its direction and its growth. It can expand in any direction it wants, depending on the variable. Then it can use various shapes to emphasize and to discriminate between 2 items or components. Look at the connectors, the lines or the connecting line bar between 2 shapes. This is basically showing the flow. It can be one way, it can be 2 ways. However, since it's not mentioned here that it's one way, we can take this as a 2-way process. And then the use of color again. Look at the red color in the middle, and then the blue color, a kind of blue color in the end, tells us that the process it ends here. So this is how you can use flowchart to display a process or procedure. Now, what you can see on the screen is an organization chart. What is organization chart good for? An organization chart is good to define a hierarchy of elements Now, photographs, maps and illustrations, they are used to create authenticity, to spotlight a location and to show an item in use. Look at the use of colors. All right. Now, this pie graph gives you some complete information. What you can see on the top is the heading bar. Then you have your data in a pie chart. Then you have a key, and you have the title of the activity what is going on. So it is for you if you want to use it to supplement or complement your data, good enough. Or if you want to write little and give this picture to define, rest of it, again it is up to you. That is your decision. We use pie graphs to show a whole and the proportion of its component, as we have discussed. Generally begin at the 12 o'clock position, drawing the largest wedge first. In computer soft programs, however, may vary in placement of wedges. We can include, if possible, the actual percentage or absolute value. However, we can always use the statistical way of mentioning them. Alright, so let's move on to documenting data. Reasons for crediting sources. How do we credit source? It strengthens your argument. It gives you protection. Instructs the readers where to go next if they want to. And two documentation formats that we use are normally MLA and APA. Now MLA is basically Modern Language Association format, where we use author name and page number placed in text, complete references in our work cited. APA style is basically we use author's name, comma, date of publication, comma, and page number placed near text reference the way you can see it on the screen. And complete references are listed at the end of the report or paper or letter wherever you are using them. Although there are 3 to 4 other reference systems which are used worldwide, however, these are most common APA and MLA style that are being used in research. Now let's talk about lecture 17. Lecture 17 was basically about research, and we discussed report writing, research writing and proposal writing together to understand the what is research process and what is the role of report and proposal writing in research, and how research basically helps understanding report writing. So what we discussed, we discussed how to conduct an academic investigation, what is the process, what is proposal writing, and what is report writing. All right, so what is research? Well, research is the systematic investigation into and study of materials, sources, etc., in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. An endeavor to discover new or collected old facts, etc., by the scientific study of a subject or by a course of critical investigation. That is the definition by Oxford Dictionary. Now, research is what we do when we have a question or a problem we want to resolve. We may already think we know the answer to our question already. We may think the answer is obvious, common sense even, but until we have subjected our problem to rigorous scientific scrutiny, our knowledge remains little more than guesswork or at best intuition. So what is research? A general perspective is that first priority is to formulate your question, then figure out how you are going to answer it. How have others answered it? How does your proposal fit in what others have done? How will you know when you have answered it? And then you can present your answer. Now, how is research different from research guesswork? Because a research is authentic, reliable, testable, and generalizable, and that is why it is scientific investigation. Now, what is scientific inquiry and what are its characteristics? Scientific inquiry starts with a question or a problem pre-decided, and it requires a clear articulation of a goal, depending if you are into quantitative research, which approach you are taking, whether it's deductive or inductive. It follows a specific plan or procedure. It often divides the principal problem into more manageable sub-problems. It specifies assumptions you are making, and collection and interpretation of data is almost the one of the last things that we do. What is research? A valued source of knowledge. Why is it that research is a valuable source of knowledge? What are the common ways of knowing? Well, the common ways of knowing are personal experience, that is intuition. You have its experts, you have traditions, you have authority, and then you have scientific method of inquiry. So, the research is basically the application of the scientific method, a systematic process of collecting and logically analyzing information and then establishing your results. Research methods or methodology involves the ways one collects and analyzes data, and methods developed for acquiring trustworthy knowledge via reliable and valid procedures. Now, what is this research process, and how do we conduct an academic investigation? It is impossible to separate the conduct of a research investigation from the exercise of writing up the report. So these two stand side by side and go side by side, hand in hand. This part of the talk, again will focus on how these two things work together, and all kinds of methodological questions are involved in discussion about the organization of your report. So you cannot skip any part of research into your report writing. A report writing is basically a record, a reflection of your research process. So a research is basically process of research that starts and moves on to proposal, a plan, and then you finish it with a report where you document each and everything. So the key areas of research design and planning will involve purpose of the investigation and differences between reports and other types of writings. How do you pose questions and define problem? What is this primary and secondary data? How do we differentiate between them? How do we collect it? What are these methods, scientific methods that we can use to collect our data and then to analyze our results? How do we conduct, how do we use these methods to collect people's opinion, like conducting a questionnaire? And how do we collaborate investigation and then go through the research process and document it into a report or a thesis? Now, purpose of the investigation is basically to find out about a research, and that differentiate between report as a document and other documents that go with the same intention. However, an essay is altogether different from a research article. We can talk about generally agreed conventions regarding structure and argument style of both types of document, one that is research oriented and one that is written as any academic writer. However, the purpose will be different. We need to look at the purpose, like looking at the purpose is convention of business technical writing. So in that you have now moved to the stage of conducting your own empirical piece of research. So an essay talks about your opinions, your assumptions, your experiences, and maybe your ideologies. However, in research you talk about the facts and your data that you collect from the field, analyze it, and talk about the results. So you have moved from second-hand academic study to first-hand discovery and testing of the theories and methods of academic investigation. The main difference is the move from secondary to primary research. Now, academic research and its social nature. So the social process starts with your literature. Your literature review is very important because it does not only work as as secondary information for you, your secondary data, where you establish the relationship of your study to work that has already been done in the area. You also need a literature review to clarify whether your research is intended to replicate, extend, or challenge. Now, what are these three things? Well, once you are done with your secondary collection of secondary data, you go through it and you decide what are you doing and why are you doing it. Well, whether you want to replicate some previously done study or or you want to extend on some research area and add into the knowledge, or you want to challenge some work and say no, there is more truth about it that you want to bring forward to. So replication, basically it involves previous research but in a different context or maybe with a different population. Extension of a knowledge, extension of research, it involves exploring a significant new variable. And challenging previous work involves a view to challenge, challenging its knowledge claims. You need to be prepared to criticize work you consider to be problematic in some way. You should have your strategy, challenging strategy. Now, one more important thing is, it is important not only that you differentiate between the three distinct functions, but that you distinguish between your studies, whether you have an intellectual purpose or you have a social purpose. So purpose is very important to be defined like we do it in all business documents. Now, let's talk about posing questions and defining problems in research. How many steps it goes through? It goes through 4 steps: analyzing the problem, writing, formulating your report in headings, articulating issues of value and perspectives, and issues of value and perspective. We discussed these 4 items in detail. And then coming up with this, what is the point of my research study? And how can I get to this point of knowing what is the point of my research study if I can talk about these 5 areas and these 5 aspects? What motivates my research? And how am I going to report it? Is it different from the earlier work? Am I replicating? Am I extending or am I challenging? What is helping to shape my research question, or what are the propositions that I'm making? Can I focus on one thing or the other? What is my focus? Finding out your focus. Well, you may choose to broaden or narrow the scope of the questions, and in the light of what you found or the problem you experienced. So what you are doing, you are adding into the information. So no two researches are a total replication until you intend to make it to. You are not bound to stick to your preliminary thesis. Once you start with your research, you can always modify your track depending on the data that you are collecting. Your research may lead you to new, different issues and questions once you are in the field. So, going these 5 aspects and exploring them and expecting them and visualizing them and then going through them helps you find out your research focus. And then you develop your thesis, think about a thesis, synthesize and come back to your thesis. And that is the process of developing your argument throughout your literature review and throughout your report discussion. Now, we talked about how to pose questions, and we know that posing questions mean going through 3 steps: analyzing problem, formulating outline, and issues of value and perspective. However, analyzing problem deals with what are my propositions and how can I summarize them. Formulating outline deals with how do I refine my propositions and how do I structure them. And issues of value and perspective deals with how do I bring forward my assumptions and propositions and how do I articulate them in my work. And then again a word about primary and secondary sources. Well, how can we review research options? What is the secondary and primary research option that we can make use of during our research? Well, the basic premises is always academic investigation should be approached in a systematic way. Well, we understand that it has to be planned. As a matter of fact, whatever you do in business English, whether it's an oral activity or it's a written activity, it has to be planned. Before deciding on your research options, you need to work out a profile of the study to see what types of research approach or methods will be most appropriate. Now, a recommended sequence of the steps that you can take to access a broad problem can be these: that you read literature on the relevant theoretical and empirical work, looking for way or narrow down the problem, and then you discuss it with peers and tutor to define a researchable program or problem. Then you define the context of the problem to be researched and find out what is the scope and limitation. Review any comparable case studies, and especially for research questions and methodologies. Frame research questions, design an investigative procedure, select and retrieve appropriate data, proceed with analysis and interpretation, compare your findings and interpretations with other relevant studies and reliable studies to review how far you have reached to touch the conclusions, and whether they are reliable or not. Are they new? Is it a replication, or is it extending, or is it challenging? Keep on checking, keep on counter checking, and draw tentative conclusions to see which direction are you taking. Now, research in the social sciences is expected to combine the originality of an individual study with the connection of that work to existing disciplinary knowledge and previous research. Also, any study with which the researcher intends to share with a wider community, whether academic or business, needs to be contextualized to show where it comes from in terms of its theoretical and social influences and the time, place, and circumstances to which it applies. Well, there are a range of sources available for secondary research. The most well-known are published statistics. Now, what are these published statistics? These are census, housing and social security data, and so on. Published texts will also involve theoretical work, books, articles, journals, secondary analysis by experts and reports, media, documentaries, for example, as a source of information, and personal documents like diaries. However, primary research option deals with field work, field research, that is collection of primary or empirical data. Now, this we discussed in lecture 18, how can we, what methods can we use to collect empirical data, how we can analyze it, how we can draw our results. So methods and results, they have something in common. What is that? Methods and results in a study have two major things in common. At the level of research, they are the parts devoted to your own empirical or original research. This is where you focus on what you do and what you find. In your own study, there has to be a difference. Now, as you recall from our hourglass diagram that we used in lecture 18, the introduction included the literature review, and discussion section of a report were the wider perspectives you took on your study. Now, placing it in the context of theories and studies written about elsewhere, you were able to draw your conclusions and can do your analysis. At the level of reporting, they have in common the fact that you focus on writing about what you did and what you found. So in the methods section, you are expected to tell the reader what you did, your methodology both for collection and analysis, and who plus when and where you did it with, or to, your survey population as you report all this. The dominant tense is the past tense. Be very clear about language. You see, at this level, it is expected that you possess the language efficiency to get your message across. However, if you're making these accuracy issues, these accuracy problems, your message will get ambiguous in any case. So in the results section, you report what you found, what people said, what they did, and what they reported they did. In the past tense again, as we suggest, you also go on to interpret your findings in the results section. Otherwise, the reader would get very bored. So this analysis is a process that is there all the time in your report. Then we can have a quick word about the methods that we use. And one method that we learned during the research process was survey method. In research methods, we usually deal with surveys, observations, and testing or experimentation. A survey method involves questionnaires, whether you are dealing with interviews, whatever format they are, or you are getting these questionnaires filled in by people, or you are doing audio and video recordings to collect people's opinion. So in all these cases, you are dealing with questionnaires. And quality aim of a survey research is to have validity, reliability, unbiasedness, and undiscriminating attitude. Whatsoever tool you are using, make sure that your tool, these 4 items are applicable to all the tools, and they get scrutinized by these 4 items. So the goal is to collect information of data that has all 4 characteristics embedded. Validity it measures the quantity or concept that is supposed to be measured. Reliability measures the quantity or concept in a consistent or reproducible manner. And unbiasedness measures the quantity or concept in a way that does not systematically under or overestimate the true value. Discriminating can distinguish, adequately between respondents for whom the underlying level of the quantity or concept is different. So, steps to design a questionnaire. Write out the primary and secondary aims of your study. Well, before you design your questionnaire, you need to be really, thoughtful about all these things, because questionnaire is a process of data collection. And once you go through data collection and you've collected your data, you've analyzed your data, you are done with your field work. This may take weeks, this may take months, this may take years. And if your tool is faulty, if it has problems, then whatever you collect through that tool and whatever you have analyzed, whatever hard work that went in, can all go in vain. So whenever you're designing your research tool, be very clear about it, what you are including. And in order to be clear about what we want is to determine our objectives. That's the rule of business writing. So write out the primary and secondary aims of your study. Write out concepts, information to be collected that relates to these aims. Review the current literature to identify already validated questionnaires that measure your specific area of interest. Compose a draft of your questionnaire, revise the draft, and assemble the final questionnaire. So in order to assure that your research tool has these characteristics embedded, there are a few steps to be taken. So the steps to design a questionnaire are writing your primary and secondary objectives and aims, determining your goal. You write your concepts very clearly. Whatever information you want to be collected, why do you want this information, and what limitation it has, what purpose it is going to serve, what scope it has. And then you review your literature to identify the already done work in the field and see how people have gone through this study. If they have done the same, whether they have done the same kind of study or there was a difference in the context or population or the method. What difference was that? How can you take that difference? Will you adopt the same, or you will adapt it, or you will bring in altogether a change thing? So this literature review basically works as your guide, and you compose a draft of your questionnaire, and you revise the draft to see whether it works. And one thing is that that can really assure you of the quality of your questionnaire or of your research tool is that to pilot your study. Piloting your study is that you are using that research tool not on the real population but on a sample population. If you have to get your questionnaire filled by 300 students, and that's quite a task that you have to do. So you think that, I don't know how, if it is a good questionnaire, what you can do is that you can take a group of 10 students or maybe 5 students which you think is going to be a representative sample. Like if I have to, in 300 students, if I have to take 150 males and 150 females, and I have to take graduate students, maybe 150 of them should be in their intermediate level, 150 of them should be their post-intermediate level. I'll take a group of 6 to 7 students to make it a combination of my sample requirement. Females and males, graduate students, some are intermediate, some are post-intermediate. If I want to be specific about the place they belong to, the colleges they belong to or they represent, I can take one student from each college. So looking at the bigger picture of my sample, I can create a miniature. I can create a tiny sample to represent my big group, my real group, my real universe of research universe. Then I can apply this research tool to them. I can administer my questionnaire to see if I have to face any challenges, if I have to face any problems. Is everything clear for the respondents? Do they feel like asking some questions when they are going through the questionnaire? So instead of getting into a problem when I start my research and I'm done with 10 or 20 questionnaires and I need to go back, modify my questionnaire, then do my work again, it is good to do it with 4 to 5 or 6 to 10 students and finding out the problems, see if everything goes fine. And then even the piloting stage can be used inside the report to tell that this is how I established the validity and the quality of my research tool. Even that adds into the authenticity and reliability of your research process and the research tool. So and then this helps you, if there's any modification required, you can do this. And you don't need to, if you don't want to include the results of your, if there are major changes in the design of your questionnaire, probably you may not be able to choose to include the results. But yes, results can be included to show what was your previous structure of questionnaire and what is the new structure. So nothing goes in vain. Whatever you will do will be acknowledged. All right, moving on with it. Step 1 of designing a quality research questionnaire is that define the aim of the study. Write out the problem and primary and secondary aim using one sentence per aim. Formulate a plan for the statistical analysis of each aim and make sure to define the target population in your aims. Now, write a detailed list of the information to be collected and the concepts to be measured in the study. Are you trying to identify attitudes, needs, behaviors, demographics, or some other components? What are your variables? Be clear about your variables. Then translate these concepts into variables that can be measured and define the role of each variable in the statistical analysis. Is this a predictor? Is this a confounder? Or is this an outcome? Now, review the literature and see to identify related surveys and data that is collected through such instruments that you have designed, and see how successful these studies were, and if there were any problems, what were those challenges, and are you going to face the same kind of challenges? Have you made the same kind of mistakes? It saves development time and allows for comparison with other studies to improve your work and the quality of your work. Now, proceed with caution of using only a subset of an existing questionnaire, as this may change the meaning of the scores. Contact the author of the questionnaire from your literature review if you want to determine if a smaller version of the instrument exists that has also been validated. So if you need any more information, you can always go deep down in the references and can find out the details. You can contact these people personally. Step 4 is composing a draft. And composing a draft will include determining the mode of survey administration, like whether you are going to have a face-to-face interview, or this will be a telephonic interview, self-completed questionnaire, or computer-assisted approach. Whatsoever approach you want to determine, because it has a role to play in your questionnaire design. Write more questions than will be included in the final draft, so if you have to skip something, you have enough material to add into it. Format and draft as if it were the final version with appropriate white spaces to get an accurate estimate as to its length. Longer questionnaires reduce the response rate, so always try to keep it as short as possible. Then place the most important items in the first half of the questionnaire to increase response on the important measures even in partially completed surveys. Make sure that your questions flow naturally from one to another. And this was all about for our today's discussion. Well, this was an extensive talk regarding, most of it dealt with our discussion based on research process that involves report writing as well as proposal writing. So these were the contents that we discussed in detail from lecture 12 to lecture 18. So today's talk was basically a revision of these 6 lectures. This was all for today's talk. I will see you in the next lecture. That is going to be our last lecture, last meeting for this course, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.